Hello, welcome to my tutorial for the Loule Bag by Pink Pony Designs. I really enjoyed making this bag and I think you will enjoy making yours too. It's very straightforward and really quite easy, no awkward stitching. The top stitching is done before you close the bag, which is brilliant. It makes it far easier to do. So without further ado, I'll get on with the tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to seeing your bags. Okay, so now I'm going to make the bag that I've just shown you in the introduction. And what I'd like to show you first of all is the pattern pieces. I laminate all my pattern pieces. I just find that by doing that I can use the pattern over and over and over again. There's a tutorial on my YouTube channel on how to prepare your pattern pieces. I show what I do from the process of printing them to having them ready to go. So if you're intrigued, take a look. I will try to remember to put the link to it in the video description of this video, but my memory is really rubbish and I may well forget, but it is there on my YouTube channel. So that's the pattern pieces. Onto the pattern itself. Now this is a very versatile pattern. It can be made with so many different fabrics: cork, vinyl, leather, tweed, cotton, denim, you name it, more or less can be used. Which is great. I've decided to go with the cotton, just cotton, no vinyl or anything. And I'm going to do the bottom half with this pattern and a plain top. Now I have done all my pattern pieces and prepared them all. I've interfaced them with Shapeflex SF101 in black, and I didn't want to use foam in the bag. It doesn't call for foam, but the thing is, I learnt that if you're making a small bag, the worst thing you can do is use foam as a stabiliser, because you lose your room. I'm going to show you. This is a bag I made, lovely pattern. I've made it several times since. But at the time I didn't realise it called for foam, but it didn't give what type of foam. I used what I normally use for my bags, flex foam, Pellon flex foam. It's very thick. As far as I'm concerned, it's the thickest I've found. What I should have used was one of the thinner foams like Bosal or Annie's Soft and Stable. They're much thinner and sort of kinder on the room that it takes up. So this bag has no room at all. I mean, it's so hard. It's so, I wish I could show you, it's so thick. You can even see, if you look there, it's just bulging out because it is. That should be up inside there, but it can't because of the foam. So it's a shame, but I couldn't use this bag, couldn't sell it, couldn't give it away because I'd be embarrassed. So I learnt my lesson there. So I don't use thick foam on small bags. I might use headliner, otherwise known as scrim, or the thinner foams, or fleece, Decoville light. So there's various things you can use. Now I haven't made this pattern before, and I'm taking a chance, and I thought I would like my bag size to be a little bit firmer than just cotton. And so I had a think, and I decided to use my Pellon Craft Fuse 808. It's like a paper interfacing, and it can actually, when it dries or when it's fused, it can turn quite stiff, but not stiff like hard. It's just a flexible stiffness, and I thought that will give it what I want, the body I want. So I've fused it to the external pieces, but also we've got these top pieces which are going to go on the bag like this. Now I've done two because I want to do it on both sides of the bag. You don't have to, the pattern doesn't call for it, but I've decided to. And what I've done was taking into account the seam allowance for the top, for the zip, I've cut it down, and then I've put my normal shape flex on, and then I've put the craft fuse on. You could wait until after you've added this part to the bag if you want to, but that's jumping ahead and sort of trying to be prepared. So all the pattern pieces are interfaced, stabilized. I've got my external zip, and I've got my my zip closure as such with the zip pull. I've got my zip ready for the decoration on the outside of the bag. I'll be using both sides. I've got my hardware, which is just 2 little tiny D-rings, 1/2 inch, and 2 1/2-inch clasps, the zip pull, and I have my Handmade Label, which I hadn't quite got out. So I've got my Handmade Label, and I'll be using rivets where necessary. So without further ado, I shall crack on with the tutorial, and we're going to be starting with the external pieces. So to begin with, we need one of our top pieces from the pattern piece B, and one of the sides of the zips, and we want my double-sided tape. Now this is my sewable double-sided tape. I have non-sewable, which is craft tape, but I will be sewing near the area, so I want to use my double-sided tape to be on the safe side. And we just lay that along the curved edge. And this tape that I use it's a German brand. I love it. It's 4mm wide, and it's called Style Fix tape by Farbenmix or Dr. It's 50 meters long. I buy it from Bag Kits and Glitzy Bits Facebook group. That's Bag Kits and Glitzy Bits Facebook group, with Anne Foy being the admin. And I buy it from her, and it's fantastic. It lasts quite a long time on the roll as well, because it's 50 meters. So this is my go-to double-sided tape. The others do gum up the needle. This doesn't. So remove the backing. And this is very important. We need to lay the zip face down. That's with the teeth protruding on the underside. It's going to be very important for the final look. And then we carefully go round, placing the flat edge of the zip with the teeth here. I'm going to turn it round so I can see it better. Like so. And then we take it to the machine and we stitch with a zipper zipper foot as closely as we can get to the teeth as possible. And we stitch with a 2mm stitch length if possible. So that's stitched. And what we need to do now, you can either use pinking shears. I find that they don't give the best results possible, so I like to cut V-notches along the tape. This helps us get a nice flat result. So that's the notches cut out, and we just want to snip the end of the zipper tape off, and what we can do also is just to trim this a little bit, not too much, but just cut it down to about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you can do it before or after you cut the notches, whichever you prefer. I don't tend to have a set routine, I just do it as I go. Okay, and now what we need to do is get the double-sided tape and just lay it just on the other side of the stitching, like underneath it. Oh, I ran out of tape. Had no idea that I was merrily laying it down. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, as we were. And then remove the backing tape. And then what we need to do is fold everything over. So that then and there we have our piece prepared with the zipper teeth. It looks nice, doesn't it? I don't know if you can see it in that light with the, because it's black, it's hard. Anyway, I hope you can. So that's that, and then I'm going to do exactly the same with the opposite piece and come back to show you what's next. Okay, so I've done both pieces now and turned the seam over, and now we want to add it to our panel. And what we need to do is, using some more double-sided tape, place it around the curved edge. You don't want to stick any of this down. The reason will become clear shortly. And then at the top of the panel, I'm doing it upside down so I can see the edge clearly. Place this down and press. And now we want to top stitch all the way along. And I'm going to do the same with the other panel as well. So that's both panels done. I don't know if you can see the line of stitching I've done. I stitched very close to the zip. Very close. Still using my zipper foot. And now what we need to do is come to the back and trim away the excess fabric on the back to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. It's to reduce the bulk. And this is why I also put the craft fuse on this panel, so that it was on both, like so. Same again with this one. There. This would almost make panel for future. If I had made one that was reduced size, that probably would fit. So I might keep them. You never know when they come in handy. So the other thing left to do is I want to put my handmade label on. And I want to put it onto the black part. So in case you have never put a label on and would like to know how to do it, I will show you. So I'm going to measure from one side to the other and mark for the middle. And then what I do with my label is I open up the prongs and I see where they fall with the washer. It's a bit strange because, right, yeah, got that. So I think I might put it on this one actually, because I just think it looks a bit nicer on the front. And I'm going to put it a bit lower. Like so. It's worth spending the time just to, you know, make sure that you get it right. And I'm going to fold these prongs in just to get an idea of what it's going to look like there before I proceed, because I might change my mind. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's going to be okay there. Be nice there actually. So open the teeth back up, all the prongs. That's it. So now, where I've marked, I need to cut the holes. And I always, when I'm cutting into cotton, etc., I always put a bit of June Taylor fray block, because this will stop the holes fraying over time. And then we pop the label in. Pop the washer on and fold down. There. And then I always place some Peltex or anything I've got to hand, a bit of foam. I always place some over the back like that with some glue. Just going to make a bit of noise. Shouldn't really be doing it with this. I normally use my hammer, but I haven't got it to hand because my husband borrowed it. Right, there we go. So I shall put this aside and leave it to dry. But there we have it. Okay, so we need to get our D-ring piece of fabric, which is piece E. And we don't interface this. It would be too bulky. So we start by folding wrong sides together and press. Open it up and then fold the raw edges towards the line that we've just pressed. And then we fold the edges over. And then we go and take it to the machine and stitch all the way down the side, across, up and across. Okay, so there's the little tab stitched, and we just need to cut it in half. So it's 3 inches long, so we just cut at 1.5 inches. Like so. And we get, it doesn't matter which panel piece actually, so I'm going to use the back one because of the glue drying on the front one. And we slip the tab through the D-ring and fold it over, and we just need to stitch across there just to keep it closed. So I prepared both D-ring tabs and just stitched to hold them closed, and I've decided to use the front panel because there could be a reason for it. It does say to use it, so I'm going to. It's dried on the back now, so it's fine to use. And I've marked lines 3/4 of an inch down from the top. I've got it upside down at the moment. I've put some double-sided tape on the back, and I'm going to place it below the line, like so. And again, with this piece, if the tape will come away. And place that. And I'm just going to stitch across the ends. Okay, so there's the D-rings attached in place. So we pop that aside, and then we get our credit card piece, the long piece. I don't give the measurements out on the screen because that's like giving the pattern away for free, but the pattern does say how long to measure the piece, and I've just backed it with some lightweight interfacing. And for directions, we need to use directional fabric like so. So the print, I wish I could show you the print, I haven't got anything. So the print's that way up basically, so that you're looking at the print. And then you just want to turn it anti-clockwise once. And then you do your first measurement, and you're measuring from the edge to here, and you draw your line. The measurements are all given in the pattern. So you do your first measurement, then you do your second one, and you're measuring from this edge at all times till you get to the end. I obviously used my long ruler for this, and then I turned it over and I did exactly the same measurements on this side. Once I'd done that, I then made the first fold like this going up, and I placed it on the first line and pressed it, making sure I didn't press near here so that I didn't dissolve the ink. And then for the next line I folded it back, and obviously we could see the line on here, and pressed, and so on and so forth until we had that. So we're now looking like this. And then what I did, you have to make sure, and this won't hurt to say, but it's 8 inches. You want that to be 8 inches. Mine was slightly under at 7 3/4 inches. So what I had to do was slightly adjust the heights of the pockets and even them out, which is fine. And now I have the right measurement. So make sure that you have got the 8 inch in height. Once you've done that and you're happy with it, I'm sorry, if you've got a little extra left over, just trim it. You don't have to worry about altering the pockets. And then what we need to do is top stitch along all 3 folded edges. And then once we've top stitched, we just need to just stitch this side here, just where the pockets are, nowhere else. So here it is stitched, and I've stitched just down the sides here. So I don't know if you can see the top stitching. And what we need to do now is get our side pieces, and we put them right sides together, and we just stitch down at 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we do both sides. We're not going to do any top stitching at this point, we're just attaching these with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've stitched them and I've pressed them open, and then what we need to do now is fold this down to meet the raw edges, and we're going to stitch down here at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Right, now we're on to the zip, and I've cut my zip exactly 11 inches and then just heat sealed the ends. And I went ahead, I got my zipper tab piece F, and I went ahead and I ironed a seam down the middle. I ironed a fold along the centre, opened it up, folded the raw edges into that centre line, folded over again and pressed. And then what we need to do is to cut that in half. And then we get one piece, and we just lay the raw edge, open it up, lay the raw edge along here like so. Just clip this in place. Just get my clips. And we just want to stitch along that creased edge to fix that in place. Okay, I took it to the machine, and because this is black I could not see the crease, so I just drew a line down there with my heat dissolving pen. So once we've done that, we fold this over and we fold the first crease over and then fold over again like so, and then we stitch about 1/8 inch away from the edge, making sure we catch this in the back. So there we've stitched, I don't know if you can see, oops, I'm trying to show you that's better. And then I've just caught it on the back, just. So do make sure that you do catch it in. And now we do exactly the same at this end. Okay, so there's the zip finished, and we get our front piece, and we need some double-sided tape. I'm trying to get the end there. Right, and we just need to mark 1/2 inch in from each end. Okay, and then I'm just going to leave that upside down so I can see, and we're just going to place some double-sided tape along the top edge, although at the moment it looks like the bottom edge to you. Okay, pull the backing off. Okay, and now what we need to do with the zip pull, so we want it closed, so that's open. So with the zip pull on closed and to the left side, we want to place it face down, so it's right sides together with the fabric. And I'm going to turn this way again so I can see what I'm doing. And lay that along carefully and evenly, like so. I'm going to get the lining piece with, just trying to think which I want. I'm going to use the slip pockets to this one, so that the slip pockets will basically be like that on against the front, so that when you open your bag you'll be looking at the credit card pockets. That's what I want. So we want some more double-sided tape and place this all the way along. So you choose which pocket you want by all means. That's just the pocket I've chosen. And I'm just going to lay the tape all the way along this time, from side to side. Again, I'm going to turn upside down because it's easier for me to see. And right sides together, so we're putting the lining face down. Like so. And now we're going to sew along the top at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've stitched along. Now if you're using a number 5 zip like I am, if you want to, you can do a 3/8 inch seam allowance when you're stitching, but I have chosen to do a 1/4 inch anyway. So what we need to do now is get the other external piece, again upside down for me to see, and I'm just going to lay some double-sided tape and just trying to peel the backing off. And then we open up the piece that we've already done, and placing it with the zipper pull on the right this time, and face down again. Like so. Then another row of double-sided tape, and if you don't have double-sided tape, you just need to base stitch these the zip down to begin with, and then add this layer and so on. So you don't have to use double-sided tape. And then get the remaining lining piece and lay that on top. Like so. And again, take it to the machine and stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or 3/8 of an inch if you've got a number 5 zip and you want to do that. Okay, so that's stitched in place. I'm just getting my ironing pad, because now we need to press everything away. My zip's not behaving. Okay, as you can see, my zipper pull has stopped closing, and there's a reason for that, and that is the zipper pull. I want to show you, because this could happen to you one day if you're using what do you call it, continuous zipper tape, and that is this gap here. This gap can sometimes just be slightly too wide, so we need to close it a little bit with pliers. Now if you go ahead and just close it as it is, your pliers have a great risk of leaving unsightly teeth marks behind. So I get a piece of gash fabric and I put that on, and I just press down with the pliers to try and just close that up a little bit on each side. And I do it the front and back of the zipper pull. I love it when this happens, because it's nice to show you how to get out of these little problems rather than trying to act like it's not happening. Okay, and again, both sides, and sometimes you'll keep siding off and just keep persevering. Okay, now let's see, and there we have it. Open, and you can all the way in. You can feel the difference as well. So you can feel that it's really whipping those teeth. Okay, so that's that job done. Now we want to press this away from the zip. Front and back. It's important to do the lining as well. Okay. And now take it to the machine and top stitch along each side. And this cuts out that awful difficult top stitching when you've closed the bag up. So this is brilliant to do it at this stage. Okay, so that's top stitched on each side. And now we need to fold the outers together and the lining together. And what we want to do is open the zip so it's nice and open. And then we want to, making sure the D-rings are on the inside as well, we want to clip the bag together or pin it together. I prefer to use pins at this stage because with clips they can still make everything move. The fabric can still move and slide, and then you end up with it not in the right place. So, and when you get to the zipper tabs at the end pieces, you need to make sure that that's dipping down. I don't know if you can see or not, but it's that way. I think if you look at the picture as well on the tutorial, it does show you. Okay, so clip both sides. Again, make sure the D-ring's pointing inwards. I'm not going to worry about pinning this side or that side. It's the sides that I wanted to make sure that they matched up. So I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to stitch with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way round, but I'm going to leave a gap in the lining for turning. So it's up to you what sort of size gap you leave. I like to leave as big as possible, so I'll probably stitch 1 inch to 2 inches each end and then leave the rest open. Otherwise we stitch all the way around. Okay, so what we do is we start stitching and we stitch just a couple of inches on the lining side to the end. We don't stitch around the corner, we leave that, then stitch up the sides to the other side, lock the stitches, leave the corner, then stitch all the way to the end, again leave that corner, down, don't stitch the corner, just to the end, and then again a couple of inches. We want to leave a nice gap in the lining for turning. So we're going to stitch down the sides and along the top and part of the bottom, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what to do with the corners. So I've stitched it all the way around, leaving an opening, turning the opening, an opening in the bottom of the lining. And I would say, as I got to this part, I couldn't understand, I couldn't get my machine over, and then I realised I hadn't changed to a zipper foot. Use a zipper foot to stitch this, because going past the zipper tabs and the D-rings are difficult with any other machine foot. So if you've got a zipper foot, please use the zipper foot. I will have put a little notice up saying use a zipper foot, hopefully, if I remember. So now we need to close the corners, and to do that we get our corners and we try to open them up. It's a bit fiddly because they're very tiny, but lining up the seams, opening the seams up, and it's hard to see because it's all black, but as much as possible is particularly important on the outside, not too much on the lining, but definitely on the outside, to have the seams completely lined up, otherwise it looks a bit untidy. It just looks better with them. And then I get pins. You don't have to pin them together, but I just find it behaves better under the needle because it's so tiny to keep hold of. If it's pinned, it's not going to shift. Then I'm going to stitch across the corners by 3/8 of an inch seam allowance also. Right, so I've stitched the corners closed, and I'm just going to trim them down to about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to reduce the bulk. It'll help them sit nicer. Okay. And now, before we turn it, I like to prepare the lining for being stitched closed by folding the edges over and ironing them. It just means that the lining will come together nicely and there's not a lot of fuss trying to get it to close evenly. So we just iron along there, turn it over, and then that's prepared for turning. So what we do is now turn it inside out, sorry, right side out, and push everything down, push the corners out, like so, and for the moment just push the lining in to make sure everything's nice and neat, and you want to push these parts out. Like so. You won't have stitched, or you shouldn't have stitched over the zipper tabs so that they can pop out like that. So they should have been well away from what you were doing. So that's those bits. So I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is pull the lining back out, and as you can see, I've got the seam already pressed to close together. So I always like to use a bit of double-sided tape just to make sure that it stays together nicely while I sew it, but you can use pins if you prefer. What have I done with the scissors there? Peel the backing off, and then close the lining together. So that the edges come together nice and level. So that's the edges together, and I'm just going to take it to the machine and top stitch along there. Okay, so I've stitched along the edge, and I was going to give it a quick press, but it doesn't really need it. It stayed fairly neat and flat, so pop the lining inside, push it down. Pushing the corners in, and that's that. And of course I didn't think, I wanted the credit card slots at the back, which is perfect for me, but I forgot I put my label, so when you open the bag I don't see my label, but not to worry. So that's the bag made. Lovely, isn't it? It's a lovely design. No top stitching to do, which is great. And now all we need to do is to make the strap. So I'll come back with that next to do that. Okay, so we get our strap. Now I've got a 50-inch length of fabric that I've cut, and I've interfaced with Shapeflex SF101. But if you don't have a long enough piece of fabric, you need to cut 2 strips, and then what you do to join them together is you do them, the first one right side up and the second one right side down. Imagine this is 2 separate pieces, and then you place the top one so that it's going over by 1/4 inch at the top, and the bottom one is coming out by 1/4 inch at the bottom. And the reason why you do that is you'll stitch from that corner to that corner, and when you open it up it's going to look like that. Ignore the bit there. If you stitch it together like that, when you open it up it's going to be wrong. It won't be even. So have the top one poking over the top, poking over this one by 1/4 inch and coming out by 1/4 inch at the end. I don't need to worry about that because this is long enough. Okay, so the part of the filming where I showed you how to do the rest of the strap didn't come out. It just failed. So I thought I'd show you, but I'd show you on a piece of fabric that's light so that you can see what I'm doing. So in a way it's good that this has happened. Okay, so I've not done 50 inches or anything like that. I've just done whatever width or length this was. But just to recap, we have to fold the edges to each other and iron. So I'm going to whiz through this. I'm going to fast forward for you so you don't have to watch this all again until we catch up. This is what I meant about leaving a slight gap in the fabric, so that when you fold it in, the sides will be even. If you joined it right together, then the fabrics tend to get crushed and they don't join evenly. So it's important just to leave that tiny gap. Okay, so now we're about where things went wrong. So what we need to do is to just open that up the once and then fold it back so that the right sides are together, like so. Make sure these folded edges are neatly together. And then we stitch across at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm stitching in black so you can see what I'm doing. They were very fiddly and they kept slipping out of place, so I just used pins to keep them in the right place. And then what we do now is just trim very close as we dare, but still leaving a tiny amount of fabric. We want to reduce the bulk as much as possible. So that's what we're left with. And then we fold on itself. So we fold it to the right sides are out. Just use a tool to really push that corner out and get a good corner so that it's nice and flat like that. And this is why we trim up off as much as possible to reduce the bulk, because that corner wouldn't be a nice corner unless we did reduce it a lot. So we've got the end pieces like this, and what we need to do now is stitch down the edges, and we start with the folded edges so that we can make sure that they're level. If you stitch the folded edges, the open edges that go together, if you stitched along the folded edge first, you're running the risk of having the sides move, and then you'd end up with a not very nice looking side. So we stitch that side first. Okay, so I've finished stitching the strap like so. Happy with both sides. And if I'd use stabilizer interfacing, this would obviously be a much stronger strap. You do need to use interfacing. This is far too thin. And now we come to the point of adding the rivets. So because we're not using a strap end, because obviously this is very thin, very narrow should I say, I'm not sure they do strap ends this size. I haven't seen them, so that's why we do the nice neat end. So we don't need to worry about strap ends getting in the way of the rivets, etc. So what I need to do is, using ink that's dissolvable, whether it's by iron, heat or washing, but make a mark 3 inches in from the edge, and then make a dot 1/4 inch up from the edge, the end, and then 1/2 inch from that mark, so you're 3/4 inch from the end. And we get our hole punch, whatever you're using. This is a twist punch, screw punch, and press the hole. Yep. Fold this over to meet the line that we've done, and then mark for the holes. The reason I don't punch 2 holes together is that sometimes the underneath side can literally slightly shift that you don't notice, and then you run the risk of holes coming out in the wrong place, and it doesn't look good. So I only ever do 1 layer at a time to get the best result. Because I've used I haven't used interfacing, this is very soft, so it's twisting, the fabric's twisting as well as the hole punch, so that's it. Then we put our, in fact I'll do it, put our clasp on, and we put them together. Now the other thing is, if for example you are doing a strap, extendable strap, so you make your strap longer than the pattern says, I don't know, 60 inches maybe, 55 to 60 inches at least anyway. You wouldn't put the clasp on yet, you put your slider on. Perhaps it needs to go that way. So you put your slider on, and then we mark the holes. Now I'm actually going to show you how to do this rather than just the strap, straight strap. So obviously if you are making a straight strap, you just put a clasp on each end and the job's done. But when you're making an extendable strap, this is what you need to do. Oops, butterfingers. So that's the rivets on, and then we get our green machine or whatever you do to fix the rivets in place, and we so that's the rivets added. And now what we need to do is bring the strap up. Oh, beg your pardon. We need to put the clasp on, and you need to put it on the right side. So you've got the folded edge on this side, the clasp hangs underneath, and then we bring the fabric up and through. Making sure that the fabric is flat. It's like that. You've got the riveted folded edge inside, and then you come to the other end. And we repeat the process of the measuring. So 3 inches in, the first hole 1/4 inch, the second 1/2 inch up from that, 3/4 in from the edge. Fold it over, mark for the holes. Sometimes I think these issues are meant to happen because the filming didn't turn out. I've now shown you how to add a crossbody strap with an extendable strap, and you've been able to see more clearly what I'm doing. So everything happened for a reason. Making sure, which I nearly didn't do, nearly did it the wrong way, so that would have been wrong. Making sure we fold to the right side, this is very fiddly, they're so tiny. These are just 8mm by 8mm rivets, so they're smaller than usual. And my rivet press has a 9mm die on it, but if you're careful you can get away with doing different size rivets. It is always so fiddly to get the other side. So back again to the press. Okay, so that's our strap made, and all we need to do is clip it onto the D-rings. I'm all fingers and thumbs, but then it is 3:30 in the morning, so that could explain it. So that end. And there we have our bag. That was a nice, easy make. The other thing you could do, if you don't want to add a normal strap, is you could buy yourself a silver strap and add that on instead. So it's entirely up to you. And there we have it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on future tutorials. Once you click subscribe, then a little bell will pop up next to the word subscribe. Click on that and tick all notifications so that you do receive the notifications. And when you do post your bags anywhere, I would really appreciate it if you gave the link to my tutorial for others to follow. I can't wait to see your bags in the groups. Happy stitching.